Up next, what appeared to be a gory suicide turns into a brutal murder due to the discoveries made by forensic scientists. On April 11th of 2021, Savannah Brooks committed suicide by repeatedly stabbing herself in the stomach with a knife.
Based on my studies, I felt that something was off. Abdominal self-stabbing is a rare form of attempted suicide. I knew that it wasn't impossible, but was it really possible that a 16-year-old was hurting so bad mentally that she felt the need to stab herself 6 times in the abdomen?
On that fateful morning, Savannah had gone to a nature park for a walk to clear her mind. This was not anything out of the ordinary for her, as she loved the outdoors and did this at least once a week. Savannah was gone for 7 hours before her father knew something was wrong. He told the police that he drove to the nature park to look for his daughter. Upon arrival, he found his daughter up against a tree dead with several stab wounds on her stomach, which were inflicted by the knife she was holding. On the other hand, her father discovered what appeared to be a suicide note. When the police arrived at the scene, Mr. Brooks was hysterical. He was screaming about how he knew that his daughter did not commit suicide.
I just knew my daughter well enough to know that that was not her writing. She did not write that note.
The police agreed to entertain the idea that Savannah was murdered, and they collected all the evidence and took it to the lab for close examination. The forensic scientists first viewed the bloodstain patterns.
The bloodstains located away from Savannah looked a lot like cast-off bloodstains. Now, cast-off bloodstains occur when you get an object wet with blood and use force, like a swing, to make it flick off. I discussed my findings with my colleagues, and we came to the conclusion that these bloodstains were Savannah's blood. However, the stains were not caused by her.
Based on the immediate evidence found on the scene, forensic scientists began to believe that this was a homicide, and just after the bloodstain examination, the medical examiner determined that the cause of death was in fact blood loss.
After seeing all the crime scene photos, there was no doubt in my mind that the cause of death was going to be blood loss.
The knife was taken into custody as evidence. If Savannah was murdered, the fingerprints on the knife would tell us the story. However, the only fingerprints present on the knife were Savannah's.
It's very odd. The blood spatter located nowhere near Savannah makes this look like a possible homicide. But the way that there were no other fingerprints on the knife, other than the victim's, I don't know. I do love a good conspiracy though. For example, who knows, the murderer could have held the knife at the victim's hands and literally made her stab herself.
The weather on April 11th was nice, and the ground was slightly damp. This resulted in footprints left at the scene. Forensic scientists took to the lab to examine them.
We reviewed the footprints extensively. We found that there were actually 2 different sets of footprints. We could easily assume that one of the sets belonged to Savannah. When we checked, we found that to be true. However, there was a second set of footprints that did not belong to the victim.
After this discovery, everyone was in agreement that this was in fact a homicide, and the person who did it is still unknown. Now it was time for our forensic fingerprint technicians to review the suicide note to see if they could find anything.
After our nitrogen dried, we were able to see all the fingerprints located on the note. We found that the victim only ever touched the back of the paper, as it was folded when her father found the note in her hand. But those weren't the only fingerprints we found on the note. We had several unknown prints on the front of the paper. From my expert opinion, it looks as if these prints were made by holding down the paper during the writing process. So clearly, someone killed Savannah. But who?
The police began to dig into Savannah's background in search of people who would want her dead, like enemies. It didn't take long for them to figure out that Savannah only had one person that despised her. This person's name was Hayden Battle. Miss Battle lived very close to the crime scene, so the police went over to her house and brought her down to the station for questioning. However, the police felt that they couldn't believe what Miss Battle was telling them.
So did you know this woman?
Yeah, we talked every now and again.
So you guys were close?
No, not at all. I actually hated her, but yeah, I'm just gonna miss her a lot.
Because they felt that Hayden was lying, the police obtained a search warrant so they could look for any incriminating evidence in her house. There they found a pair of shoes that had fresh dry mud on them. The sole pattern on the bottom of the shoes were identical to the footprint pattern found at the crime scene. They dug through her trash and discovered a pair of gloves covered in blood. Now only a simple blood sample could incriminate Hayden. Once the evidence was presented to Hayden, she admitted to the murder of Savannah Brooks. In her confession, she revealed that she followed Savannah to the nature park with the sole intent to kill her. She crept up on Savannah wearing the gloves to conceal her fingerprints from the murder weapon, and she attacked her, stabbing her 6 times in the abdomen. Hayden stood over Savannah and then walked away, flicking the knife, creating additional blood spatter away from Savannah. She then took off her gloves and found a location to sit and write the suicide note. After writing the note, Hayden got up, put her gloves back on, grabbed the note and the knife, and placed them in the hands of Savannah. Finally, she left in a rush, leaving footprints in the damp park dirt. Hayden was sentenced to spend the rest of her life in prison, and Savannah's family continues to mourn her loss today.